welcome to another edition of Girard at Large. I am your Caught Them with the Goods host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. As you know, you can find us online at girardatlarge.com, and you can find us on Facebook and Twitter, also at Girard at Large, where we encourage you to like us and to follow us. Why? Well, when we get our hands on pieces of information that some in power just don't want you to know about, we put it out on social media. And why does it look like I'm having vertigo on the screen? We all sat there?
Centering you up.
Just centering me up. All right. Okay. Well, we have a really, really big show. And I guess what we'll start with tonight, we might as well start with a bang. Mayor Jay Rouet, who has been teasing a special event in all of his newsletters that are going out to people on his list. I can't say they're all supporters getting them. I mysteriously started getting them recently, about the time where he started to announce this special event with Governor... What's her name? Oh, Kelly Ayotte. Yes, Governor Kelly Ayotte. You know, you won't want to miss this. Well, of course, he's announcing tonight, as we speak, his re-election bid. The man who says that good policy is good politics, and who in numerous interviews with the union leader over the past several weeks, if not couple months, has steadfastly said, I'm not even thinking about re-election. I'm too busy. Well, he's announcing his bid for re-election, and this is something that has been in the works for a while. And how do we know this? Well, we know this because, among other things, when he released the results of his phony poll, the push poll that was designed to make him look like the second coming of Donald John Trump, he also released a little tidbit that said he had raised $300,000 in cash for his re-election bid, of which $250,000 is cash on hand, which means they've spent $50,000. Shortly after he made that announcement, you might have remembered I commented about the departure. It was back in November, beginning of November, the departure of Nick Pappas, his chief of staff, from his office. And it was a great big secret. Nobody knew why Nick left. Well, yours truly has discovered that Nick Pappas left the mayor's office for no other reason than to become the campaign manager of the Jay Rouet for mayor campaign. So, the man who's been publicly saying, I've been too busy to think about it. You see this clock I've got here in my office? That's the countdown clock that tells me how much time I have left in my term. And I go to work every day thinking only about how I can make things better for the city of Manchester. No, he's been to raise $250,000, $300,000 in a non-election year. No, he's been thinking about re-election for some time. Not a surprise. And I don't fault the guy for wanting to run for re-election. Most politicians, especially in a 2-year cycle, do want to run for re-election. What I fault the guy for is just being dishonest, as he has been on so many issues since he's been elected mayor. So we'll start there with the idea that he keeps saying he's really not thinking about it. He hasn't given a thought. He's too busy. Well, all along, they have been planning this re-election bid. And I don't know why it would hurt him if he were just honest and say, yeah, I mean, you're thinking about re-election, Mr. Mayor? Of course I'm thinking about re-election. We got some really great things going here. You know, I'm not ready to make an announcement yet, but we are definitely thinking about it and probably going to do it. But, nonetheless, I'm not ready to make an announcement. Why can't you just be honest? You know, if you can't be honest about the little things, the simple things, the obvious things, what else aren't you being honest about? So that bogus poll they released, you notice that they really only released a couple of statistics, such as his favorability rating. What I thought was interesting about his unfavorability rating, blah, 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 that's all, folks, was just the sheer number of people who, despite his being in office for a year and his unprecedented number of press releases and all of his social media activity, a lot of which comes from events he stages during meetings so he can take pictures with all these people that he's honoring, was a staggering number of people who have no clue who he is. And he didn't release any other data from the poll other than the right track, wrong track, and still a majority of people in the city of Manchester do not believe we're on the right track here in the city following his election. He only had 46% of the people thought he was on the right track, or thought the city was on the right track. But they didn't release the results of any other question. I'm particularly interested in one that I shared with you last week and the week before, about which one do you agree with? Why don't they tell us what percentage of the people who agreed with the statement about, he was opposed to the $306 million boondoggle, but now he's supporting it because there's nothing he can do. Yeah, they didn't give us the breakdown of who answered what on those two questions, so that we know which one of them are out there, which one won. So Roué tonight announcing his re-election bid, something that has been in the works literally for months. Almost 3 months ago, his chief of staff left to run the campaign. That's probably where a good chunk of the $50,000 he's spent on the re-election campaign that he hasn't even been thinking about have gone, among other things. So meanwhile, meetings have been taking place quietly with some heavy hitter Republicans in the city looking to primary or come up with a primary challenge to Mayor Jay Roué. Particular anger over his refusal to consider taxpayers in his budget, his refusal to redirect money that fell from the sky up in Concord, allegedly for schools, to the taxpayer, but increasing school spending by $7.5 million instead. And I think the last straw for a lot of people was what he did with the Beach Street schools. So there is definitely, as we discussed last week, anger on the right. I'm aware that meetings have taken place. A potential candidate is going to be coming forward in the not too distant future, and the process of building a conservative campaign to challenge the many failings and let's just say the failings of the mayoral tenure of Jay Roué are in the works. So keep it here, because we are going to be following all of this as things come along. Now, one of the things that Mayor Roué said recently, and I think this is important because the state Senate today approved a ban on sanctuary cities in the state of New Hampshire. And now you might say, well, what? Yeah, there are actually several communities around the state whose town meetings or, boards of selectmen or town councils have, issued edicts. There's even, I believe, the Cheshire County Sheriff said, no, we're a sanctuary county. So we have sanctuary knuckleheads in the state of New Hampshire who think it's a good idea to refuse to cooperate with federal officials when it comes to the enforcement of immigration law. I recently saw an article sort of saying, are these communities really sanctuary cities, or aren't they? And one of the communities under discussion was the city of Manchester, where the mayor was asked, mayor flat out said, no, Manchester is not a sanctuary city, and they just took it at that. Well, the truth of the matter is Manchester kind of is a sanctuary city. And so I want to define what I know, and once again, wonder why Jay Roué, maybe didn't get into the nuanced answer that would be completely accurate and honest versus just saying, no, we're not a sanctuary city, because in fact we are. It's not that we will release somebody that ICE has asked us to hold. We will. The City of Manchester Police Department, if asked by federal authorities, will cooperate with federal authorities to hand over people that they are looking for. That is not the issue. However, the City of Manchester Police Department does not initiate contact with ICE when they arrest a bad guy who happens to be an illegal alien. Right now, you've probably seen all over the newspaper, they've got some John Doe. I don't know what, probably, I don't know. How do you say John in Spanish? Brendan, do you know how to say John in Spanish? Well, for all we know, we should call him Juan Valdez, clearly the man is not a John Doe by the pictures that I've seen in the newspaper. He's he's been arrested and charged with identity theft. The person whose identity he stole, they tracked down in Puerto Rico. But gee, and they're putting stories in the newspaper saying, "Do you know who this man is?" My guess is, if he doesn't have fingerprints and in the system, and he doesn't have identification on him, he's probably not here legally. So why aren't you calling your buddies at ICE to say, "Yeah, we got a live one here. We at least want you to look at because we don't think he's one of ours." So if they catch someone dealing drugs, if they catch someone committing rape or murder, if they catch someone stealing your car, and they are not here legally, they will not initiate contact with ICE. They will not notify federal authorities to come take them away. Their rationale is, well, if we do that, then other people in the immigrant community won't cooperate with us when it comes to investigating crimes here in the city of Manchester, which frankly is about the dumbest thing that I've ever heard of in my life. Because if the whole idea is you're removing people who have committed crimes in addition to the crime of being here illegally, do you think the people in that community want those people released? No. So Manchester, while not technically a sanctuary city, does and has for some time had, I believe, Police Chief Mara, going back that far, was the one who instituted these policies. I remember talking to him about it on my radio show, and that's their idea. Well, we want to have a good working relationship with the immigrant community, and if we turn over people who are, in that community, and they, because they commit crimes, well, then they'll be afraid to cooperate with us because they think we're going to turn them over to ICE. Well, maybe if they know you turn over people who murder, rape, steal, burn things, do whatever, maybe they'll be very willing to work with you to get them out of the community. And by the way, maybe it'll make them think twice before they commit a crime, because if you put them in cuffs and say, all right, you're going up the river with ICE, yeah, maybe they won't do it. So Manchester does have sanctuary policies. And this law, which I know the former police chief opposed them. I don't know if the current police chief does, but the fact of the matter is that we need to, we need to start thinking very seriously about these people in our community. And we need to start getting serious about removing them. Frankly, if I were the police department, and your Hillsborough County Jail, by the way, something you should be talking to your Hillsborough County commissioners about, absolutely has sanctuary policies. They will not let federal authorities come into the Valley Street Jail to pick up people that they want on detainers. They create a situation where they want the federal authorities. So if you're here to pick up a gang member from another country and federal authorities want them, they want the federal authorities to wait unprotected in the parking lot while the person of interest walks to them in the parking lot. I've spoken to people who know about this intimately, and the fact of the matter is that creates a horrific safety risk for everybody involved. When they drop off prisoners at the jail, they don't leave them in the parking lot to walk to the front door. There is a prisoner transport portal that they drive into. It's for safety reasons. They will not let federal authorities use those prisoner transport doors to pick up illegals that they want. And so ICE not wanting to put its agents at risk or the public at risk by creating a situation in which they could easily be ambushed is not picking up illegals that they want at the Valley Street Jail. So all around us, sanctuary things are happening, and we're making pretend that they're not. Meanwhile, not only do we have sanctuary policies in our City of Manchester Police Department, we now have the Manchester School District in a letter that was, and I do not know how widely distributed this letter was. I don't know if it went to every family in the district. I don't know if it just went to families of questionable origin. But the Manchester School District is now advising families whose immigrant status is not legal on how they can avoid being taken by ICE, and moreover, what they as a school district are going to do to prevent federal officials from coming into school properties and potentially removing illegals from the building. Now, it's not just, look, this all started because there was a lie in Chicago that ICE was going into schools and taking children out of their classrooms, when in fact Secret Service was looking for access to a particular school in Chicago where a wanted fugitive who was illegal happened to be. And of course, the Chicago school system did not cooperate. But here is what the City of Manchester School District sent at least to some families in the district. I'm going to read you the letter, and I'm going to share with you the policies that they have. Now, this was something the person I got it from gave me screenshots of this letter from their phone. I wish that I had gotten the actual email communication, because there were links to various videos that I didn't really know how to find. But when you hear what your Manchester School District, a school district that you, the citizens of Manchester, are giving over $235 million to, it's almost $236 million. And before Jay Rouet became mayor, it was $227 million, and now it's $228 million, and now it's $236 because he gave them $7.5 million. So what's that? 229 plus 7 is $236.5 million. This is what your taxpayer dollars are giving you. Dear families, it starts. The Manchester School District takes immense pride. What is my email? rich@girardatlarge.com. Thank you for sending me the email trail. Sorry, get Facebook Live here too. The Manchester School, oh, and by the way, I do want to say something. Well, B, I'm going to ask you to remind me of something when I get through with this one. I need to come back to some of what's being said about the Beach Street school situation, okay? B? Okay, I not really, but okay. So it says, Dear families, the Manchester School District takes immense pride in the rich diversity that defines our communities. Oh, and by the way, when I was on the school district, and I never told anybody I was doing stuff, because I would ask for certain pieces of data that I believed, now I'm not going to tell you what the data was, but I would ask for certain pieces of data. And based on that information, my conclusion at the time, when I was in the school board, which was pre-2020, that upwards of 10% of Manchester's population, school population, were children who were here illegally. Period, full stop, end of story. Since then, the Manchester School District has seen more than 1,600 students leave our district. That's the decline in enrollment, which means that the population of illegals in our schools has probably only grown because the numbers have shrunk. But, okay, so the Manchester School District takes immense pride in the rich diversity that defines our community. Our students' unique backgrounds and experiences contribute to a vibrant and inclusive environment where learning, growth, and success thrive. Every day, we welcome over 12,000 students to our school. According to state figures, it's 11,865, I think. We are steadfast in ensuring they feel safe, supported, and focused on achieving their best, whether that's in the classroom, on stage, in athletics, or pursuing their passions. In light of recent changes to national immigration policies, aka now that we're enforcing the law, we want to take a moment to reassure our community and emphasize our commitment to protecting and supporting every student and family in our district. Yeah. We wanted to reach out in response to the recent announcements shared in local and national news about changes to national immigration policies regarding undocumented citizens that could impact students and families in our schools. Admission that we have them. Over the last few days, a number of families have reached out to district staff with questions and concerns about these changes. While new information is coming in each day, we want to affirm that our number one priority is to create a safe learning environment that makes students feel welcome regardless of their real or perceived immigration status. We also want you to, why would we need to protect them, feel welcome? We also want you to know that we have shared this information with all staff. So the staff are being instructed on how to obstruct federal authorities should they arrive at a school. When it comes to our students' families' immigration status, please know that the Manchester School District maintains the following protections. Access to education for all. Every child residing in Manchester has the right to a quality public education regardless of immigration status, race, ethnicity, language, or neighborhood. This is a core value and a legal mandate of our district. Resource review. Joint guidance, so now what they're doing is they're giving a listing of places where people can go to protect themselves against arrest and deportation. Joint guidance from U.S. Office of Civil Rights and Department of Justice, quote, confronting discrimination based on national origin and immigration status, a resource for families and educators, right? Because enforcing the law against you would be discrimination. Privacy protections. Manchester School District does not require or request information regarding immigration status or citizenship from students or guardians. But they know whether or not the children are legal by whether or not they have a social security number. Additionally, we do not share personally identifiable student information with law enforcement or federal immigration agencies unless required by a court order or lawfully issued subpoena as outlined by the family educational family educational rights. By the way, I saw something online. I went back to find it. I should have taken a screenshot. But if ICE is coming for you, they don't need a warrant under the law. If they're coming for you because you are not here legally, and there is no court in the United States of America that can issue a warrant for federal authorities to pick up someone here illegally. So this whole idea that they need to have a warrant, I'm not sure it's entirely valid. Back to the resource guide. Joint guidance document from DOJ and the Department of Justice and the U.S. Education Department Office of Civil Rights. Information on the rights of all children to enroll in school, questions and answers for states, school districts, and parents. The U.S. Department of Education FERPA 101 training video link. I wanted to look at that, but there was no link. Review MSD Policy 104 Personnel FERPA Policy. Commitment to safety. In order to maintain safe learning environments in our schools, buildings, our district has a visitor policy to ensure that we are properly vetting visitors and their purpose for visiting our schools. Resource review, Manchester School District Policy 111, community visitors to the schools. Resources for your consideration. In addition, we have included local resources for review and use if you, ... Welcoming NH. We've all heard of Welcoming NH, haven't we? This is a wonderful organization that welcomes immigrants with open arms. A big part of what they do is teaching immigrants who are here illegally how to avoid being caught and how to play the system. Welcoming NH, list of support services available to immigrant and refugee families. And, the way they're lumping all of these potentially illegal with, actually legal people here, because if you're a refugee, you're here legally, is just a way of trying to confuse everybody into thinking that they're one and the same. And the more people here legally that you can instill fear in, the broader the community of support, let's say, the broader the fear, the broader the pushback is. Know Your Rights and Family Preparedness video, Family Preparedness Plan, Immigrant Defense Project. These are all the resources. Our team continues to monitor the situation and will provide further updates as new information becomes available. In the meantime, If you have any questions or concerns, we would remind you to reach out to your student's school administration, guidance counselor, multilingual liaison, or member of the district team. Sincerely, Jennifer Camille, our superintendent, Amadou Hamadeh, who until recently was a social worker at Central and is now the executive director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice. That's the one that replaced Tina Kim, Tina Kim Philibot, who I told you months ago had been put on paid administrative leave and escorted from the building, which was only partially denied. But so that office is still got someone making over $100,000 a year in it. And then Wendy Perrin, the executive director of English Language Instruction and Equity. See, we have equity in there twice. So the school district is moving to advise families how they can protect themselves. And also, here are the policies that they reference. I'm going to read them to you in this letter that they are going to use to try to foil federal authorities that may come to a school for whatever reason. Now, if you're watching what's happening in the country, ICE isn't going into schools to take out children. I mentioned that one incident in Chicago where the Secret Service wanted to get in to capture a known fugitive, but ICE, not so much. Anyway, Personnel 104 confidentiality. It is the policy of the Manchester School District to respect the privacy, dignity, and confidentiality of all students attending the Manchester School District. This policy covers student records, medical information, and other personally identifiable sources of information. It is the policy of the Manchester School District that such personally identifiable information should only be viewed or received by school district employees who have a legitimate educational interest in viewing or receiving the information, as well as those officials involved in a supervisory capacity over the school in which the students are enrolled. All Manchester School District employees shall comply with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. The superintendent shall develop regulations for the implementation of this policy. So in other words, if law enforcement actually does come around, whether apparently they have a warrant or not, asking for information on a student, maybe it's a student in a high school. Maybe that student in a high school is a gang member who's wanted for criminal activity. No cooperation here from the city of Manchester. We are not going to provide any information based on this policy. Visitors to the schools. All persons other than staff and students enrolled in the school who may come to the school for any reason during the school day are considered visitors and must report and sign in at the school office. Employees of the school district, directors, coordinators, maintenance staff members, and others are to advise the school principal or secretary that they are in the building. A visitor, a person not employed by the school district, must immediately report to the school office and receive permission to be on the school grounds. Oh, I'm sorry, you're here to pick up a gang member from our high school who's here illegally and is wanted for several crimes? Nope, we're not going to give you permission to come on our school grounds. Persons wishing to meet with a teacher for the purpose of discussing a particular problem shall do so only at a time when it does not interrupt the normal school program by appointment only. No person shall visit a school without first reporting to the office of the principal as to the purpose and place of the visit. So they intend to use the visitor policy to prevent law enforcement that might be there to take a dangerous individual out from being able to be on the property. And if they are looking for personally identifiable information, they will invoke the FERPA law and refuse to provide it anything. Now, you might think that this is far-fetched and that the school district is kind of wandering on a limb. But one of the questions I didn't ask the school district, because I damn well know they won't answer it, is what legal advice have they been given to affect such a series of policies? Well, something happening in the state of Maine, a law firm issued sort of like blanket guidance, a public letter, if you will, to school districts in Maine on how they can fight these immigration enforcement efforts. And the law firm that issued the statement is known as Drummond Woodsum. You'll never guess what law firm is under contract with the Manchester School District. Drummond Woodsum. So this letter, which if you'd like, I can post up. I can post the article. Actually, if you're following me on social media, especially Twitter, because I posted this up on Twitter, you can go to Girard at Large on Twitter. You can scroll down in my on my page and you'll see it. It's an article, or you can go to the Main Wire. I believe it's mainwire.com. It's a news site, and they broke the story, and this is what they've got. So it talks about the Trump administration, large-scale enforcement actions, blah, blah, blah. What should schools do if immigration officials request access to student information? If immigration officials are requesting access to information about students, school officials should be mindful of their obligations under FERPA. Educational institutions are not allowed to share personally. I'm gonna tell you something. Federal law enforcing immigration statutes is going to trump this. Pardon the pun. One simple measure, FERPA does not allow schools to share directory information such as student names under certain circumstances, but schools are not obligated to share the information. One simple measure would be to limit the type of information that schools retain. Avoid asking about citizenship or immigration status of students. Oh, did you notice them say that the Manchester School District doesn't ask for it? Remember, Social Security numbers are part of the information collected on students, so we know exactly in the Manchester School District how many, at a minimum, are here illegally because they won't have Social Security numbers. Don't ask for citizen or immigration status of students or their parents or guardians for any reason. Schools may collect some national origin-related information, such as a student's place of birth, U.S. entry date, and the date of student first attended school in the U.S. to comply with the federal and state reporting requirements for special programs. However, this information should not be stored as part of a student's record and should be destroyed as soon as it is no longer needed. So they're now telling school districts to get rid of the evidence. FERPA permits school districts to disclose student information in compliance with a judicial order or lawfully issued subpoena. However, not all papers that ICE or CBP, that's Customs and Border Patrol, may provide in conjunction with a request for student information qualify as a judicial order or lawfully issued subpoena, as discussed below. I've already told you that immigration law does not require federal authorities to have subpoenas to go after someone who's here illegally, and courts cannot issue such subpoenas. Schools should consult legal counsels to ensure they are complying with FERPA obligations before releasing information. So, you noticing any similarities between the Manchester School District letter and this letter that was released by our law firm, the one that we use in the Manchester School District? Must schools allow immigration officials to access students during the school day? How a school should respond to immigration officials depends on the nature of the warrant. And that goes through the types of warrants. The upshot is, it won't surprise you to hear, and as you can see, it's kind of a lengthy letter, so I don't want to read it all. But as you will note, the information contained in the letter sent by the Manchester School District to its parents is a mirror of this. They just don't use as many words. They simplified it, if I can put it that way. Front office staff and building administrators should receive training on how to respond if an immigration official shows up at school. That would be policy 111. The front office staff should ask for the immigration agent's credentials, ask the agent to identify the legal basis of their request, ask for any written authority that instructs agents to enter school grounds, and it goes on and on. Our school employees or contractors, including a school resource officer, are required to report undocumented students. At this time, school employees are not required to report undocumented students. What should schools do if a student's parent or guardian is deported? If large-scale immigration enforcement actions lead to the deportation of a student's parent or guardian, the student may return home to find no caregiver. In anticipation of this scenario, schools should encourage parents to update their emergency contact information now, including designating an alternate individual who can pick up the student if the parent is unavailable. if an emergency contact is listed, blah, blah, blah. That is actually part of the resources that the Manchester, that's updating your plan, your family, have a plan, and all that other fun stuff. So it would appear that the Manchester School District is acting on the advice of its legal counsel, which was publicly given to every school district in the state of Maine. So, meanwhile, the mayor who told us that Manchester is not a sanctuary city has issued no statement about this letter, which, as school board chair, this letter went out, I believe, on January 24th. So it's a week ago that this letter went out. And unless things have changed substantially at the Manchester School District, something like that would not go out without at least notification to the mayor and every other member of the school board, even if it was after the fact. So the mayor, who has created a press list that sends his press releases statewide. I know this because when I was up working in the Claremont area publishing the Eagle Times newspaper, we would get Mayor Roue's press releases. And when I contacted his office about it, I said, you do realize we're in Claremont and we're a local paper, so it's very unlikely that anything happening in Manchester is going to make the paper up here. They said, oh, well, we think that everybody in the state is interested in what's happening in Manchester. So we built a statewide press list so that anyone interested would know. Yeah, that's a guy who's really intent on being Manchester's mayor for the foreseeable future. But so the man who has issued more press releases in the last year than all of the mayors going back to Raymond J. Wazorek have in their entire careers, has issued no statement whatsoever about this edict from the school district and how it intends to interfere with or otherwise inhibit federal agencies who may, for whatever reason, come onto school grounds seeking to remove students or gather information as they work to remove, first, as President Trump said, those here illegally that have committed violent crimes in their communities. So the mayor who emphatically said Manchester's not a sanctuary city to this news outlet that I read about, I think it was New Hampshire Journal that ran the article, had nothing to say about this. Maybe at his big re-election party tonight with Governor Kelly Ayotte, who stands firmly opposed to sanctuary cities and sanctuary policies, maybe he'll make some kind of statement or edict about that tonight. But the mayor of the city of Manchester has not said anything about this letter to parents regarding how the school district is preparing itself to not cooperate with federal authorities on matters of immigration, the enforcement of immigration law. How are you sleeping at night in the city of Manchester knowing that? I'm just here to tell you what's going on. And moreover, no member of the school board has said anything about it either. It's kind of funny because I was at a Ward 6 meeting last week. I believe it was last Tuesday, where Jim O'Connell showed up. And the policy that Manchester School District has that prevents schools from telling parents when their children are engaged in gender nonconforming or transgendered behavior in school. And it's not just, high school kids. It could be a kindergartner, it could be a second grader, it could be a 7-year-old kid who, wants to be called Susie instead of Johnny. And they are not allowed to tell parents. And if parents asked, they are not allowed to answer the question honestly unless little Johnny or little Susie, the 7-year-old, says, it's okay to tell my mommy. If they say, it's okay to tell my mommy, or it's okay to tell my daddy, then they will do it. But other than that, the policy, so, and that policy was brought up by a parent in the discussion. And Jim O'Connell goes, well, we need to protect students. And then Dan Bergeron was there, the school board member from Ward 6. somebody got up and read the policy because O'Connell's like, it does not say we can't share it with. So someone got up and read the policy. It was Ken Tassi, the former school board member of Ward 6, who said, here's the policy. It was clear that the staff is not allowed to tell anybody at all, without the permission of the student, about the student's transgendered identity. And then, so somebody asked Bergeron if he supported that, and he said no. He said, well, how come you didn't vote against the policy? He said, what policy? I mean, the guy was totally out to lunch. It was really scary. So, you've got a school district now that's doing this stuff. And meanwhile, so while you've got the schools that are joining the sanctuary movement, there's a bill for universal school choice in the state of New Hampshire. And Senator Tim Lang of Sanbornton, Lang, public school teacher, encouraged him to pursue the reform. Okay, parents would be responsible for all costs of transfer. Oh, actually, I thought this was Victoria Sullivan's bill. But basically, what this does is it says within a community, you're able to send your kid to any school that you want. There's also a bill, and I thought this was the article that I took, so you'll forgive me. But there's also a bill that, by the way, if anyone wants to call, it's 603-698-3233. There's also a bill that would make education freedom accounts universal. Right now, there's an income cap on the education freedom accounts, and there is legislation. It actually passed the House of Representatives. Last year what passed the House of Representatives was increasing the income limit from 300% of the federal poverty level to 500% of the federal poverty level, because there are a lot of parents in the state of New Hampshire who have modest incomes that are just outside of that 300% range. And it's a really big hardship for them to spend the money out of pocket to send their kids to a school that is more appropriate than what the public charter or the local public, read that as government school district, has. And so there's a desire to give more kids more opportunities and provide parents, especially if they have like a special needs child or they have certain circumstances, greater flexibility in getting their kids educated, greater flexibility in finding options that better meet their children's needs. I would hope that we could all agree that that's something that that we want. But no. Anyway, okay, have the money. I'm sorry, what's that?
Your kid just called in to remind you about talking about Beach Street School.
Beach Street School. Thank you very much. All right. So before I get back on that, the Beach Street School. So there has been an attempt to revise history or to recreate facts, and unfortunately, it may be working. So among the things that Jay Rouet said, we tried to touch on this last week, but among the things that Jay Rouet said was that we cannot rescind the $80 million bond or $80 million in bonds to build a new Beach Street School. And because we can't rescind it, we have to spend the money on something, and the quickest way to make sure that the kids who are in portable classrooms get to permanent space is to build the new Beach Street School. It's the most cost-effective way to do it. Of course, we know that's false. But what I wanted to do is say, hey, listen, look, this is how bond funding works. First of all, the whole idea of rescinding the bond was used by the mayor as a really big it was a red herring. It's a false flag, okay? Even if the legislation that was brought up is passed, I would not support rescinding that bond. That to me doesn't make any sense, because at the end of the day, you have to admit that our school buildings do need upgrades, improvements, renovations, repairs, et cetera, et cetera. And because of the $110 million boondoggle that Bob Baines gave us, that we're still paying for today, The school district went for a very long period of time where it couldn't do the types of maintenance, repairs, and upgrades that it needed to do to the buildings because that project so cash-strapped the budget that there was just there was very little ability to address these things. And so now that we're getting to a point in time where we can address these things, boom, we've got this enormous $18 million annual debt service thing dropped in our lap. That having been said, that 80 plus million dollars that was dedicated out of the $290 million worth of bonds that were issued by the city for phase one, the lion's share of it going to middle school renovations that simply are not justified. That money doesn't need to go to a new Beach Street school. It doesn't need to go to building a new facility. It can be used. There's no effort involved in this at all. It can be used to do renovations and other capital infrastructure work to the school buildings. So I know there are some people out there, and Chris Morgan, the Ward 1 alderman, who is telling people, well, we have to do something with the money. We can't rescind the bond, and there's no other way to spend it than to build a new school. That is not correct. All of the money in that bond can be used for any capital improvements that need to be done to the schools. It just so happens that they are being programmed to the 4 middle schools and the destruction of the current Beach Street school after the construction of a completely unnecessary Beach Street school. So we want to make sure that everybody out there listening and everybody on Facebook Live who's following, we want to make sure they know that it is not true that bond money had to be spent on a new Beach Street school. Okay, so back to the things that we were saying. So this universal school choice bill is one where the money follows the child, and it means that any school, any child in a public school in the state of New Hampshire can go to any public school in the state of New Hampshire. So, if you've got, if you're living in Manchester, but the Bedford or Goffstown school districts have got a program that your kid can go to, well, guess what? You'd be able to send your kid to that Bedford or that Goffstown school so long as there was capacity for the school to take you. You'd be responsible for your own transportation. That's right. Victoria Sullivan's bill was one that would say there's universal public choice within a community. This is a bill that says there is universal public choice throughout the state. And then there's another bill that would say that education freedom accounts would be expanded so that any and all people in the state of New Hampshire who wanted to take advantage of it could take advantage of it. And there's a certain logic to all of these bills because at the end of the day, what we know is that parents that are involved in their children's education help improve their children's education. And the fact of the matter is if you're a parent now and you either have the option or the responsibility of determining which school your child goes to, you're gonna have to pay more attention. You're gonna have to look for the programs and the policies and the environment that works best for your child. Because choice provides options, and options require study in order for them to be chosen. Education freedom accounts, which probably, very controversial on this. Of course, the unions and whatnot. Even in a system where you get to choose which public school your children go to. No, we can't have any choice of any type because now they're worried that this will mean that poor kids won't have as many options as wealthy kids because the poor children's parents won't have as great an opportunity or capability of transporting their children to other schools like rich people will be able to do. I mean, you just can't win. But the education freedom accounts there's a certain logic to it that says, look, the state of New Hampshire has come up with a system to provide aid to public schools for the education of public school children. Okay, so the way the aid is tailored now, it's to give money to systems alleged. Oh, and speaking of which, by the way, why do you think the City of Manchester School District would be so adamant about doing whatever it could to prevent the removal of illegal students here illegally or their parents from the Manchester School District? Because, if a parent leaves, they just might take their kids. Well, it's because the system pays the city or any town for the number of children in it. So if Manchester has got $90 million in state aid, I think it's got 97, but let's say 90. So if Manchester's got $90 million in state aid, and let's say because of all of this immigration work, there are 1,000 fewer kids in school next year than there are this year. At roughly 5,000, I think it is. 5,000, I forget what the number is. We'll call it 5,000, just to keep the numbers round. So 1,000 times 5,000, that's what? How many, is that $5 million that the city of Manchester will no longer get in state aid? And so it's really all about the numbers. The more kids they keep in classrooms, whether they're here legally or not, the more money they get from the state and federal governments to educate the children. And we all know that Manchester is the least well-funded school district in the state of New Hampshire, which is not a true statement by any stretch of the imagination, because the numbers that they use to perpetuate that lie don't include what we spend on debt service, which just went from 12 to $30 million. It doesn't include the money we spend on transportation. It doesn't include the money we spend on school food nutrition. It doesn't include a lot of things that should be counted, in my opinion, in the per pupil expenditure, which is what they're always using when they say, oh, well, how many school districts do you know out there who get the debt service and transportation costs that we do? Nobody. But we can't count those numbers. Anyway, but we sure as hell can count what it costs us to fund the teachers' retirement and health insurance benefits, because that goes directly into education, where the classroom that we just built and the debt service we have to pay for it doesn't. So there it is. So back on the education freedom accounts. What the education freedom accounts do is it gives just a portion of the state aid that would go to a school district if the parents sent their kids to a traditional school, and it gives it to the parents. And it gives it to the parents so that they can afford to send their kids to something other than a public school, which includes public charter schools, to find more appropriate environments and academic programs for their children. So when you think about it, they say, well, it's taking money out of the public schools. Well, it's only taking money away from the public schools when the public schools lose a student, which means local taxpayers who, if the school district is responding to its shrinking numbers, they should be reducing their expenditures and lowering their overhead, but they don't. But there is an argument to be said that if the student is no longer in the local school district here in the city of Manchester, where we're spending $24,000 per child, that $24,000, gee, if that student moves on, there's $24,000 that we shouldn't be spending on that child, isn't there? Unless, of course, you're Mayor Jay Rouet and you give them a $7.5 million increase on their budget, even though they're projecting fewer students in the coming year. Then your per pupil numbers skyrocket because you just gave a serious increase to the schools as they continue to lose students. So I'm going to wrap it up with this, something that I didn't get to from the prior Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting. Of course, they presented their findings from all of the community input on the zoning. We went over that on a prior show. And of course, they didn't really get into the minutia, but Mayor Rouet mentioned that the committee that he appointed is hard at work taking all of our community feedback, much of which came from people who don't live here and are part of special interests, so that they can come back and refine it. He's already talking about greater density, et cetera, et cetera. Meanwhile, led by Senator Keith Murphy, District 16, who lives up in Ward 1, the legislature is looking at legislation that would limit the amount of space that a single family home can be put on, and they're doing it in different ways. So something like the city of Manchester, if this law were to pass, couldn't have a single family home on anything larger than a 22,000 square foot lot, which is less than a quarter of an acre. So what that does is first of all, what that does is any single family lot in the city of Manchester that is in excess of that size, which would be a lot of them, it makes them pre-existing non-conforming uses. So if they want to make any changes to their property, they'd have to go through the zoning board of adjustment, because you can't make any material changes to a property that's a pre-existing non-conforming use without going through the zoning board of adjustment. The other thing it does, by limiting the lot size, you're limiting the size of the home. And when you limit the size of the home, you limit the value of the home. And so if you are an upper income person, and maybe you have a large family, or maybe you have a lot of dogs or something like that, and you might like to be on a quarter acre lot or a half acre lot, or God forbid, an acre lot, you are no longer going to be looking for housing in the city of Manchester, which just means that people of greater means will, with greater frequency, move out into the towns. The towns get hit by this too, but they're limited to an acre. And so if you want a little land, you're going to have to leave the city of Manchester, because the city of Manchester is going to be prevented from creating zones that actually will be responsive to that market segment that wants more property for whatever reason. And let's be honest, those people tend to have higher income, and having facilitating the development of a higher income cohort within your overall demographic is a good thing. Those are people who contribute to our community in ways that people who aren't as well off can't. And it's a funny thing, because the people who have money in a community like Manchester end up supporting, subsidizing, or otherwise funding a lot of the services that people of lesser means need. So this is a raw deal for the city of Manchester, because it will prevent us from being able to offer the kind of housing that would be attractive to upper income people. We automatically will lose those folks to the surrounding towns, and we ought to be very wary of that. I am your ever humble host, Rich Girard. Thanks for tuning in. Until next week, be good, be well. Don't do anything we wouldn't do. We're proud to have in the audience. Thanks so much for being there. Until next week, good night.